Okay, so welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. Here doing something in studio today from home, and wanted to welcome our guest today, who comes with just a lot of accolades, Chris. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to steal the thunder. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and a little bit about who you are and what you do, sir.
That sounds great. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Hood. I am a digital strategist by trade. I'm also an author, just published my first book, wrote and published my first book, and podcast host as well. So I have my own podcast and I do a lot of little things here and there, but mostly I spend my time talking with people about how to implement different types of digital strategies from a customer-centric perspective. And very passionate about helping businesses grow and think about things in new ways.
That is great. Yeah, I'd love that you're a fellow podcaster. That makes me feel right at ease almost immediately. I'm not an author, but I'll tell you what, I do have your book. And for those who would be interested in getting it, I'll try to throw a little picture of it up on here. I don't know if they can see it, but we're going to make sure and put a link to that in and where people can go and check that out. I got it towards the end of last week, and I'm already fascinated, and I wish I would have got a chance to finish beforehand, but I like what I'm reading already. So tell me, Chris, a little bit about your past. One thing that I know about you is a couple different things. You're not defined by one, but many. And outside of customer transformation and the Chris Hood Digital Show, you worked at Google. Is that correct?
I did. Yep. Worked at Google for 6 years and did a lot of what I still do today. It's spending time with companies. I did a lot in the innovation space. How do we innovate new ideas and sometimes technology, maybe not always technology, but new ways of approaching an industry and thinking about your customer. And so between innovation and digital strategy, I did a lot of great and interesting things at Google. Not everything that I can get into today, but definitely was a fun experience.
Yeah, very cool. And your profile, you've worked with a lot of media and entertainment, including Fox, Disney, Universal. So you're just basically just getting your feet wet, right? That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. So tell me a little bit about customer transformation. Tell me a little bit about your book, kind of what got you started down this, and how do we relate that to kind of our little piece of the world and our little niche, the shed industry?
Sure. So customer transformation, if we were to define it, is a business strategy that aligns your customers with your internal processes, technology, and culture of your organization. So what we see in a lot of companies is a very strong focus on what you do, but not really a clear understanding of how what you do aligns back to what your customers are looking for, what their needs are, what their aspirations and expectations are from you. You know, sometimes we even think about like the customer experience or the customer journey, but really there's a lot of other areas within a business that should also be focused on delivering, satisfaction to the customers. And this goes across to B2B and B2C. It's nonprofits, small businesses, large businesses. So one of the big arguments that I usually have with companies is, well, we're B2B. We don't really have customers. Well, yeah, you do. B2B stands for your customer is another business. And I would argue that it has to go beyond that. You have to look at those end users, because I believe that if you were able to deliver something to your customers, the direct business that you are selling to, that is ultimately going to appeal to their customers, if you can offer that service and make that connection, then you're going to help your customer grow, which then in theory, you're going to grow. But you've still got to understand who that end user is, who that end customer is. So I'll just overly simplify this. We know that sheds can be built with wood, metal, plastic. But we're going to get crazy here. Let's just say somebody says, yeah, but I really need a shed made out of paper, right? Of course, that's not going to happen. But let's say a whole bunch of customers are asking for sheds made out of paper. Well, wouldn't you want to provide that from a B2B's perspective? Because you know that if you offer that, they're going to sell more sheds made out of paper, right? That's the mentality you have to get into. And oftentimes we see that they're so focused on what the business, the direct B2B wants, and forget about that next step, that customer, and then wonder why, sales aren't happening. Because as I outline in the book, you've got to understand that full value life cycle.
Some of my more rowdy listeners might say their competition makes sheds made out of paper. So we like to, what I love about the industry is we definitely like to tease each other, but there is a good sense of fellowship beyond, even within the industry to support each other and things like that. So in talking about digital strategy, like how do you approach creating that for a business? What are steps that you take that, because we're a very fragmented industry in a sense, we have a lot of different ways that in which we approach the shed business. We have big business, we have bigger box stores type that have multiple consignment lots across the country. And then we may have smaller mom and pops that, just appreciate being able to not expand into franchise, but really smaller, just more community centered. So how do you approach like a digital strategy in that sense?
Yeah, well, as all good strategies start with the customer. You've got to understand, how do they want to engage with you? Again, to overly simplify it, we talk about mobile devices now. Most people have a mobile device that they engage with. And so maybe you want to explore how the mobile device is going to help you within either manufacturing or even selling those sheds. Let's look at something from a different industry. The car industry, there's a service like Carvana. Carvana is, I want to be able to buy a car online, and then they will actually deliver the car to your doorstep and then give you the keys and you drive away. You could even try that car out for a couple of weeks. If you don't like it, turn it back in and get a new car, right? Could you apply that same concept to sheds? Like, I want to look online, buy my shed, have the shed delivered, dropped off in my backyard, and then use it. And, could I potentially return it? Like, this isn't the shed for me. I need something bigger or smaller. And service comes and picks it up and drives it away. That's all being facilitated through a digital application. I mean, we can get into things like design and custom sheds and, it's obviously technologies that are built inside of the shed. So your strategy still has to start with, what is the consumer asking for? How do they want to buy? No different than the car industry. There are people out there who are willing to pay for a car online and have it dropped off. There's also people who want to actually go to a dealer, walk around the lot, haggle with the salesperson, see it, take a test drive. Those people are there too. But in both scenarios, we're starting with a customer, what their needs and expectations are, and then we're building a strategy around what those needs are. And that's how you have to think about it.
At iFab LLC, our passion is welding, fabricating, and design. That's why in 2015, we began to commercially market our product to the shed, portable building, and mini barn industry. Our product is primarily used to build trusses. Our truss saw system cuts boards in one motion, and our truss press system installs and presses the gusset plates to a finished truss. We custom fabricate jigs that assure perfectly symmetrical truss setup without error. We also have other products designed to help your shed builder increase quality, efficiency, and save money. Our precision door tape will build your custom doors square every time and easily adjust to build any door. For products like these or other custom fabrication services for your barn shop, visit ifabllc.com or call 563-422-7496 or simply email us at ifabllc@gmail.com. You talk about like the focus being on the customer. So I worked in customer service for quite some time. I originally was come out of the military. I was a jailer, and it was like, oh gosh, there's no personality is actually needed. It's not necessary. All you really have to do is go in and do your job. And then I realized, wait a minute, this isn't a lifetime career move for me. I want to do something different. Went to, there's a casino that was in our small little town here in the Midwest, and decided to work for that casino. And think what you will of them, of casinos, but they offer excellent customer service. And why? Because the product's not tangible, because you're not going to typically walk out with a shed or a car or whatever else you're purchasing. You walk out with an experience. So they really focused heavy on how to make the customer feel. The reason I'm giving you that sort of that background is because I feel like I know to some degree, but what would your explanation be on why to spend so much time centered on that customer? Why does that give you good ROI? Why does that come back to you in the end whenever you focus on the customer?
Yeah. Well, your casino experience, I think, is a great way to look at it. It's an experience that you enjoyed. Look, anytime we go on vacation, if you go to a hotel and you have a good experience at the hotel, most likely the next time you go on a vacation, you're going to return to the same hotel. Why? Because you had a positive experience. Anybody who has had a negative experience, you go to a restaurant, you have a negative experience, whether it's with the service or the food, odds are you're not going back to that restaurant. These concepts are very basic in principle. It's the experience that we are trying to drive. And in order to meet that fun, exciting, interesting experience, we've got to deliver it back to the customer, because it's the customer who's going to engage with it. We can apply this to sheds. You don't think that there's an experience with using a shed? Well, the last time I used a shed in my life, I went to the back. The hinges were rusty. I'm trying to open it up. It's very flimsy. I'm like, ugh. And then you swing it open, and then it's dark inside. I can't get the lights. Like, that's a bad experience. My grandfather had a shed in the back of his house, and he lived in Florida on the one of the canals, had a boat, and every day he would go shrimping, so if you ever watch Forrest Gump and, the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, he would literally get into his boat every morning, like 4 a.m. before dusk, go with a flashlight. I went with him a few times, scoop up the shrimp, and then he would bring the shrimp back. He would freeze them, and he had multiple refrigerators in his shed where he stockpiled frozen shrimp. So my understanding of what a shed was all growing up was a shrimp storage unit, right? but
Right.
Right. Again, the experience, right? I have some fond memories of that shed. I can't tell you who the brand or the maker of it was, or what the material was, or how. I know where it was. I know what it looked like. I know what it felt like when I entered it. That's an experience. And I think when we think about things in that way, we have to be able to offer that mentality. We go back to cars, like the difference between driving, say, a Porsche or a Corvette versus, galloping on a horse is different. They're different experiences. And we market those experiences, right? And I think that's the mindset that people have to get into when they're thinking about, again, their strategy and how they're going to market these, whatever it is.
No, I wrote down hospitality because you mentioned hotel, and that's really, in many ways, that's what we're trying to accomplish. If you take a look at the shed sales division, if you take a look at that part of the industry, and of course you're trying to connect the hospitality with the manufacturing and then with the logistics of how you get that there and what the experience is for all of the customers. Your story there with your grandfather, I love the part where you said, not because I'm happy about it, but you were saying that the branding didn't really matter. And that's one thing that I find in the industry is that even our best marketing efforts in a lot of ways, don't really, I mean, you have to build, don't get me wrong. You have to build that brand somewhere. So not to chastise anybody for what they're doing, but most people wouldn't know the name of a brand of a shed, but they'll know the details of the shed, how it makes them feel, how the sales process can dream with them if what they're doing is bringing in several freezers, because what's your goal ultimately with the customer? So is that sort of what kind of led you to writing the book? Is that kind of, how you offer help and with people's experiences currently to focus, customer centric?
Yeah. It's, as I started off with, this is not just the product and the marketing piece of it. We're talking about the experience, but there's so many other elements to a business, your financial elements, your marketing elements, your technology. There's a lot of companies out there that want to buy technology, and you have to start asking the question, well, why do you need this technology? A good example of this would be artificial intelligence. Obviously, AI is big in the world today. So then I would have to ask the question, from a retail perspective, why would you need AI? We could probably identify a few areas. Same thing from manufacturing sheds. Like, why would you need AI? Again, we could probably come up with a couple of ideas as to how you could leverage AI to improve the manufacturing process. But ultimately, you still have to drive that back to some sort of value proposition from the person who's going to be using the shed. At the end of the day, look, my home here, I would consider as a smart home. I've got everything connected. I can control my lights. I can control everything. Do we see a world where we're starting to see smart sheds? Like, as soon as I walk into the shed, will there, do we have surveillance? Do we have all automatic lighting? Do we have air conditioning controls? Just security cameras? Do we have a smart lock on it? Do we have any type of monitors in the shed that tell us what's actually in it? If we were looking back at the shrimp, we've got smart refrigerators now that can say, hey, your milk is about to expire, right? And then communicate back to ordering more milk at the grocery store and having it automatically delivered. Like, do the sheds have some sort of smart sensors to determine if the contents in that shed are, current, available? If you've got a lawnmower in your shed, can your shed communicate with the lawnmower to say, it needs more gas, or it's out of charge if you've got an electric, lawnmower? Like, these are the things that you have to think about, because it's not just about technology for technology's sake. It's about, what is the consumer looking for? How can you help their experience in using that shed more interesting and impactful to them?
Nowadays, there seems to be so much to choose from when it comes to offering rent-to-own. So many companies have all these promotional items that go along with the rent-to-own program. It's hard to know where the rent-to-own program ends and the shed company begins. At Country Classic Rentals, we believe in doing business the old-fashioned way. Old-fashioned doesn't mean we're not capable. It means we still value a handshake. And we believe when you say something, your word means something. There was a time when you could look someone in the eyes and say what you mean and mean what you say. We have built our company from that philosophy. At Country Classic Rentals, you can be confident that when you produce an RTO contract for your customer, we will make sure that the customer is taken care of when they become our customer. Country Classic Rentals is ready to have exploratory phone calls with shed companies in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and Tennessee, looking to partner with a trusted and resourceful RTO partner. If you're looking for an RTO partner who will work for you, give us a call at 937-483-4588 or call toll free at 800-649-5667. Just ask for Stan, and we'll be happy to have a conversation. Country Classic Rentals, the freedom of ownership.
I saw a video this morning. I think it was probably scrolling through Linked or Facebook, or I'm not sure. But it was his name? Brian Gumble, maybe, and then Katie Couric on USA or whatever, Today Show, whatever it is, 1994. And it was about a minute or 2 minutes long, and they were discussing this thing called the internet. And you should have heard, you have to hear the conversation now to go back all this time later to really appreciate the conversation, for people to say, Chris, you're talking nonsense. What are you talking about? We're building sheds here. You know what I mean? We're just putting storage in people's backyards. But, you know, the reality that innovation can come so far that you can have automatic lights in the shed when you go out back. Hence your experience when you went into your grandfather's shed and it was dark, or wherever it was. You know what I mean? Like, what's going to make that better so that it better serves the customer, and who's going to be ahead of the line on that? Futurists talk about this a lot, right? You know, like trying to embrace the future and embracing things as they come about, because it'll give you a competitive advantage. It'll make you a first mover in a lot of cases. My very own experience, I remember my own in-laws, and I love them to death, great people. I remember us talking about how they just really needed to get a computer, how it would make some things so much easier for their life. And oh my goodness, you'd have thought that we just absolutely skinned a cat. Like, they were like, no, why on earth would I need a computer? Once they got the computer, like, they really, really enjoy it and use it to make their lives easier. Yeah. But then the internet became the same thing. And I remember saying, you guys got to get online. And they're like, why on earth would we need to do that? Now, when I go over there, like, my mother-in-law's teaching me stuff about how it made their life easier that week.
Yeah. I mean, the mobile device is the same way. Heck, podcasting is the same way. Like, sure. You gotta get a podcast. Now everybody seems to have a podcast, right? It's a natural evolution, and look, maybe AI is going to change that, but you know, we're in a world where the Jetsons predicted flying cars back in 1962. Yeah. Right. And we're now at a point where we may have, you know, real flying cars soon, you know, but it's not just, again, you know, we like to talk about technology and a futuristic view of how we might be able to use the technology. But these experiences, as you pointed out with the casino and hospitality, they could also be transformative if you understand what customers are looking for. And before we started recording, you were mentioning how, you know, one of the competitors of the shed industry could also be storage units. Well, that's actually a fascinating comparison. When my first instinct was to say, well, let's say I have a plot of land, and let's say that I have, a couple of acres. What's to prevent me from buying a couple of sheds and renting that space out, creating a mobile app saying, hey, storage units available in my backyard, it happens to be. I've got, 10 sheds, all with locks and security and everything else that I could put in there. And then I just rent out through a mobile app that space. Like, there's really no difference, just because it's maybe inside and it's protected from the elements and, and those other things that storage units provide. The argument then becomes is, could you provide similar types of functionality and benefits from a shed? And the answer is probably yes. You just have to dive into that a little bit more. But we've changed now the narrative of what a shed is being designed for. And I think that's sometimes the mentality that a lot of businesses don't adapt to as well.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about over the past how I've seen some companies do that. Maybe not create the mobile application, but they don't want to buy. They've got the land and they don't buy the. They don't do the on-site build. They'll buy a portable, and then they'll line them up next to each other, 10 or 20 in a row, and then they'll sell that space just the same. You're trying to create a solution for storage, ultimately. Mm-hmm. And I know in the shed industry, I'm definitely guilty of this. The shed becomes the celebrity in the process, right? Like the quality of the shed, the focus on build, and if that's what someone wants is a shed in their backyard, it makes perfect sense. But as you were sitting there talking about that, I've thought about how others have done that very same thing. We're setting on, this may be a crazy idea, but this is why I love creativity. Chris, I think creativity is the key it's the answer to everything, right? Just create something that makes sense. So for me, if you've got all of this inventory sitting there on your lot, that inventory it's waiting to be sold. It's not drawing any money. So if you've got 100 buildings sitting on your lot, you're not going to sell likely all 100 buildings next month or even in the next 6 months. But what you are going to do is always have about, 10 buildings that you could set aside, and you could literally be collecting money off of those as they're just sitting there as dead weight, as dead money sitting on your lot until which time it sells. You could be turning those into storage facilities for people to use. And then when those people realize, I'm tired of paying this, I need to actually get something, they become your customer long term. I mean, I know shed companies with, 20, 50, 100, 200 buildings sitting on location. And maybe you offer a discount and say, hey, I can only give you a month before this gets out of there. Maybe the customer don't want to wait a month. Maybe it gives you a chance to do a new to be built shed or whatever. But I love the idea of sitting and going through this brainstorm process that we are. Is that your view of customer transformation? Is that kind of what I wish I could have got through more than a couple of chapters, but I do have your framework, you know what I mean, for like the 7 strategies. And I wanted to go through those or give you the opportunity to go through those to kind of help,
sure,
give the listeners an indication of what your book would be. But I'm sorry, I threw a lot at you there and I didn't take a break to give you a chance to answer. Looking to grow your shed business this year? Say goodbye to the struggle of day-to-day management. ShedSuite has you covered. With ShedSuite, you'll get access to a full e-commerce suite for your shed business. That includes customizable dealer websites, real-time inventory management, streamlined quote and order flow, and robust analytics and reporting. What's more, ShedSuite was designed specifically for shed manufacturers and dealers by experienced shed builders just like you. With low-cost merchant accounts and integrated payments, ShedSuite makes selling sheds a total breeze. Ready to get started? Our team is excited to help you grow your shed business through 2023 and beyond. If you're looking to scale up and automate your shed business, book a demo now at ShedSuite.com. Are you coming to this year's Shed Builder Expo at the Knoxville Convention Center on September 27th and 28th? If so, be sure to stop by the ShedSuite booth and meet our friendly team and get an in-person demo of the ShedSuite platform. And don't forget to enter to win some incredible giveaways. We'll see you there.
Yeah, I think where you got, creativity, brainstorming ideas is the starting element of, asking basic questions like, what is a shed? Like, what is it? What is its use? So you could say, well, a shed is something to store things. Okay, let's start to break that down and say, if I said, I'm going to give you a shed for free, but you can do any number of things other than storing things inside of it, what might you use it for then? We talk about self-storage units. Well, that's still storing something in it. What if we were to convert all these sheds into mini offices. You're an entrepreneur and you need a place to work. You set up a desk, you set up a phone system, computer, you get internet access into it. Shed is nothing more than a mini building that you could do something out of. Office space. Well, that's a good idea. Could you make it into a chicken coop, right? Sure, you could, put chickens in there, lay eggs, make money off of it because now you've got eggs and you can sell the eggs like chicken coop. Okay. You could start to just systematically go through this process of thinking, what could you do in a 10 by 10 space that has walls on it and a roof? Any number of things. Could you use the shed to, I'm thinking again out loud, crazy, like a puppet show. You could put that in there. We see. Could it be a paperweight? No, it probably wouldn't be a paperweight. It'd be expensive paperweight, but that's the process you kind of have to go through, right?
Well, we see music studios. A lot of people need a place that's quiet. They want to stay quiet in their house. You know what I mean? They need a place that's soundproof.
Man cave, a video game room.
Absolutely. Right. Yoga studios. And you're really starting to see the acceleration of sheds beyond just an outbuilding, which is traditionally what you might have saw in, say, the 70s, 80s. A place to throw your lawnmower and your tools or something like that. But now you're beginning to see a very sophisticated change in lifestyle in the way that people live, and they want that space to be separate. Through COVID, we saw a lot of people that worked from home. I just heard today, this is kind of ironic, Chris, maybe you'll appreciate this. We're on Zoom, but Zoom has an actual office and they encourage their workers to start coming back to work today, which is a bit ironic given that it's a mobile application. Yeah. But the reality is, where did those people work from? Did they have to take a spare bedroom? Did they have to, did they have some separate space? Shed sales actually, you may not know this, but they increased significantly during that time of COVID because people were at home. They were either working in their garden, they needed other just structures to be able to use, whether it be a home work office. Maybe they did music and they needed to do that from home. Maybe they needed to set up a filing room or something where they could work and not be around others. But there's so many ideas and it's changing. I mean, we're seeing 3D sheds, being built now. I mean, it's really going to this new area, but what you meant to solve whenever sheds were a problem that needed solved anyway, were typically storage. Now, we kind of talked about the minimalistic perspective and how you can service both options because people want to live tiny home. They want to live minimalistic now. So we have a lot of shed builders that are going into that area. Anyway, I love it, man.
If we go back to your music example, I think it's actually a really good way of thinking about this some more, is you've got a shed, and typically shed builders, you're building the shed and maybe that's it. It's just like, we're going to give you the structure. Here's your shed. And then the customer has to go through all of the additional effort to, configure it in the way they want. But imagine if you now had some, accessories. You want to convert this shed into a music studio. Well, we have sound panels that we can now provide you that, tap right into the sides of the shed because we've built it with your music interest in mind. If again, we talk about like a yoga studio, well, we've got some unique lighting elements and, other things that are accessories to the shed, because now we've built not only the structure itself, but we've now built these adaptable elements that can be tapped in for you to use it in the way that you want to use it. And you can buy them separately or you can buy them as a package, right? That's ultimately solving what the customer use case is, what the customer needs, what they inspire to have their shed do for them. And that's what we're talking about when we think about this whole overall customer transformation.
So no, I love it. I've always been a customer-centered first type of sales approach, even whenever I was in the industry more directly. And for me, it's always about figuring out what the customer's needs are. It sounds very cliche, doesn't it? For sales,
it is. Yep.
You know, like, well, what's the key to sales? Well, focus on the customer. Ooh, you know, it's not very fun, right? But it's still a lot of these. What do they call those idioms or whatever? You know, they become that for a reason. They stick around for a reason. That's why people continue to say things over that test the theory of time, is that if you focus on the customer in 1970 and what their needs were, it's still very relevant today to build your brand and to build your product that you plan to retail around the vision of what the customer wants, and not always just what you want to sell. Good example is marketing. We offer advertising on this podcast. There will be a couple that breaks in between even this show where someone will come in, attempt to sell. I've had customers come back and say, hey, I signed over 20 clients by advertising with you. I've had other clients say, yeah, I haven't had such good luck with it. And I always try to figure out that marketing ROI and say, well, what's the difference? We got in front of the same amount of people. So are you considering how wanted or needed your product is? Are you considering your approach to customer service whenever they call? If one guy is in the same ballpark that you are in terms of what they're offering and they're seeing massive success and you're seeing zero success, it's not as much about focusing on your marketing ROI dollars. I mean, you're focusing on your ROI, but maybe you're putting the business first and the other one's putting the customer first, for instance. Perfect example of a very small thing that you can change to have success, that can make your efforts more successful. Now your dollars don't get spent in vain. And it would be the same way for a shed manufacturer attempting to reach shed customers, because the parallel I'm trying to draw there is that you're selling, in theory, a very similar product. Like from your perspective and not being directly in the industry and taking an outside in approach, it's like you said before, I don't really know the brand, and you probably couldn't name me a brand of sheds without Googling it. But you know that if you go from one location to the next, they're going to be, in theory, the same. There's not a whole lot for the salesperson to overcome in terms of like product, but the service that you offer, wow. Now, focusing on the customer whenever they come in, that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Well, here's another way we can think about marketing. If we bring it back to fast food, Chick-fil-A spent about $150 million in marketing and advertising last year. McDonald's spent about $400 million in marketing last year. So 150 million to 400 million. Now, you could argue that McDonald's is making more money, so they spend more, right? But the interesting thing is that if you were to say like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, there's going to be a lot of people who are probably listening thinking, well, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A, right, over McDonald's. Why?
Hello, shed sellers. Did you catch the latest Real Work Labs interview with George Converse? If not, don't miss this value-packed episode. Head to Shed Geeks Podcast YouTube and search Real Work Labs. George and the Real Work Labs crew are riding the wave of Google's latest updates, taking your digital presence to the next level. We're tech artisans crafting your neighborhood brand voice for shed sellers like you to stand out, gain trust, and get found online. Our software will easily capture your work snapshots, videos, weave your craft's story, and get reviews all in one virtual experience. Our innovation goes beyond getting found for your business location, rather getting found for your work locations. Reviews intertwine with their corresponding job sites. When potential customers seek local expertise, you're the proven solution they'll find. It's high time to map your reviews and showcase your beautiful work in a meaningful way that builds trust in customers' neighborhoods. Ready for the journey? Visit shedgeek.realworklabs.com or call George today at 480-787-7575. Real Work Labs, elevating your trust, increasing your conversions, and getting you found where you work in the neighborhoods you serve, one shed at a time.
Well, their brand, their reputation, their products are all driving those sales, so they don't really have to market as much. But it's the quality and the experience and what they represent that is part of that brand. They're delivering that experience, again, casino example, into everything they do. There's clearly a different experience when you walk into a Chick-fil-A versus when you walk into a McDonald's or even through a drive-through, right? And again, they're delivering, again, what a customer is looking. They don't have to advertise and market as drastically in order to generate those sales. And if you can unlock your ability to, I'll throw one more in out here. I don't know, where most of the listeners are located, but on the West Coast, we have In-N-Out hamburgers, In-N-Out. They hardly do any advertising, and yet they are pretty much one of the top hamburgers in the entire country, and they're only in a couple of states. So how can you, generate that type of revenue without advertising and marketing? It's because, again, it's the reputation, it's the experience, it's what you're able to deliver. It's meeting the customer's needs and expectations. So you still have to keep that focus even in your marketing efforts to be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will. The only time I don't go to Chick-fil-A is ironically because they're too busy. Like, think about that problem. The problem they have to solve is getting more cars through. And I know, it's, listen, I've always been a fan of Chick-fil-A. I can think back to, in our local area, but And I think McDonald's set out to have that experience. If you think about the McDonald brothers versus Ray Kroc and what they meant to have versus what they do have, it's now it's come to a point of where customer service is just expected to fail. I mean, it's created a change in pop culture. I mean, like a McJob now is considered a bad job, right? Like you don't want to work at McDonald's because it's a bad job because it's bad customer service. It's not the best food, and that's everything opposite of, ironically, what the McDonald's brothers meant to try and personify. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Every time I go to Chick-fil-A, I have a good experience. They always say my pleasure after and there's never been someone that I find that doesn't say that. I mean, sure, I'm challenge me on it. I'm sure there's some guy out there who's just not happy at his job, but generally speaking, the experience has always been good. In your book, I think it's in your book, but I know it's in the profile. You talk about a culture of praise in an organization where it's essential in today's business climate. I'm curious. We're a very conservative, sort of industry. I would say if you were to just broadly describe the shed industry, what do you mean by sort of a culture of praise, like towards the customer? I know, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's in the book. So those who want to understand a culture of praise, go read the book.
That's right.
But in there, I unlock what praise actually represents. It starts with P, which is purpose. You have a purpose for your organization. And that's often a very interesting conversation to have with companies because, you could say, our mission is to create the best and most sturdy sheds in the industry. Well, I'm making something up, but okay, so that's your mission. But then your purpose is still ultimately to deliver that to a consumer. And how are you going to recognize that in your internal teams? How do you praise a team member who goes above and beyond delivering to your customers. We talk about Chick-fil-A and it's my pleasure. Well, it's ingrained in every single employee during every single training that's how you communicate with the customer. That's part of their purpose, right? And then as we go around praise, we unlock R, A, I, S, and E. And I won't get into it, but the goal here is that you're aligning your internal culture and the recognition of your employees to participate in the idea generation, in the focus on, look, everybody is responsible for customer satisfaction. You know, there's a lot of people who's like, well, I'm just an IT guy. I'm just ensuring that the computer's up. Well, you're responsible for customer satisfaction, no different than the custodian, no different than, a salesperson, no different than the executives, no different than anybody else in the organization. You've got to look at it as, in order to be customer-centric, everyone is responsible for customer centricity. And the praise model is about recognition of that and encouragement of that. So as an example, like the I of praise is about innovation. We rattled off a whole bunch of ideas earlier about what we could do with sheds. Well, are you recognizing employees who are coming to you with ideas? Do you have a suggestion box? And the suggestion box is not just like ideas of how we can improve processes internally because I don't want to do any work and I think we can improve this. It's also about recognizing ideas of ways that we can present new products and services back to our customers. Too often we hear concepts like, you're an IT, that's a design, element, like stay in your lane, is a common word, or, hey, that's not your job. We've got other people who are working on that. Focus on what you're here to do. That's your responsibility. Well, in the praise model, we kind of break those silos down and say, no, everybody is responsible for contributing to the success of the business, which is ultimately contributing to the needs of the customers.
You're right on. One of the things they implemented as a Fortune 500 company when I did work there was a program called Own It. And the process and the thought behind Own It was that, you have ownership in the company because you're helping to make it better. So they wanted to make everyone feel like they had a way of having ownership in that to include profit sharing. I mean, so Own It didn't just mean you own it in theory, but it was a way to come into your job and take pride in putting out a good product or a good service or creating a good experience for a customer, which is really, much of what we did. Security was even really customer focused, not as much security focused. It was making sure that people who came there to spend their money got a way to be able to do that. Basic training for me was the same thing. That's why they call it boot camp, and then it went to basic training. But basic training was for the purpose of having the ground rules, the basic level of understanding combat down. If you get lost, here's how you read a map to be able to get back or find coordinates or things like that. So, but then you got your own area of expertise beyond that. If it was whatever, logistics or artillery or whatever field you went into that you were designed to be able to do that. So it's always been something that stuck with me, that like you get the basic information, and that's what all customers or all employees should be doing with every customer that comes through is, making sure they provide that experience and not, don't pay no attention to them because they just build sheds. There should be an engagement there that they care about the company and want to see, feel that ownership level, so that they can provide the customer with the best experience possible. Take me through real quick. So the name of the book is Customer Transformation. Like I said, we'll put like your Amazon link or something there where, people will be able to go and shop from it. Give me, can you do 5 minutes on, the 7 strategies that you created for customer transformation, just for the audience, so they can know a little bit more about your mindset when you wrote it?
Yeah, sure. So there's seven stages. Each stage has a customer-centric approach, as we've been talking about today. The first one is customer. First stage is customer. Obviously, you want to start with the customer. So you have to understand what the customer's needs, aspirations, expectations are. Most importantly, what are their goals? And oftentimes we have our own internal business goals, like make more money. Well, that's great. You've got an internal goal, but you have to focus on what the customer goal is. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? What is that solution that you want to offer? Stage 2 is called interfaces. And this is how customers interface with your business. Now, the obvious one is like a mobile device. We've got mobile devices everywhere now. And so you log into your device, you go to their website, you're looking for options, you're contacting support, whatever. The mobile device is obviously a clear indication of interfaces. However, in today's world, we also know that we no longer are actually directly engaging with a business through, say, we used to call them touch points. But now we don't have to touch anything. Our smart homes, I can voice activate something and tell Google, like, give me information. We've got sight and sound elements that are being experienced, virtual reality to see things in new ways. Heck, we're even, podcast is audio, so we're listening to our companies. There's a doctor, a scientist in Japan that just invented Taste TV, where you could literally go and lick the screen of the television and taste what's on that screen. Like, you think that's sci-fi? Can we get to taste the shed? This is where we're talking about the different types of interfaces, how we engage with different businesses. The third one is journeys. This is your typical customer experience, customer journeys, the process by which they go through, typically where marketing sits. A lot of people, a lot of businesses want to start with journeys, but you're starting with a journey without really understanding what the customer goals are first, or how they're going to interface with you. I use an example of, like, we'll stick with fast food. Like, I'm hungry. That's the customer goal. That's stage 1. Now, where am I going to go to eat? Maybe I want Chick-fil-A, but maybe I want chicken nuggets. Well, I can go to McDonald's and get chicken nuggets. I can go to Chick-fil-A. I can go to Cane's. I can go to KFC. There's lots of places I can go get chicken. So that's the interface. And then sitting down and actually eating it with my friends, or talking, dipping it into the sauces, tasting, that's the journey. That's the experience. Then we get to the middle one, which is ecosystems. This is all about your community and your connections with partners. B2B fits nicely in this space because it's all about building these opportunities between different entities to grow that fan base, to grow that community. We talked earlier about a shed and a music studio, and maybe offering some sort of accessories like sound panels. Well, the ecosystem would be where you would go build a partnership with a sound studio to integrate that into your sheds, building that ecosystem between two different businesses and offering something new to facilitate the customer goals that are back at the beginning. The fifth one is culture. We talked a little bit about that. That's the culture of praise. It's about building a culture that is customer-centric and making sure that your employees are being recognized in the exact same way that your customers are. We talk often about customer satisfaction. Well, customer satisfaction is a score that we keep to understand if the customers are satisfied with our products and services. Are you doing the same thing for your employees? Do you have an employee satisfaction score? Are your employees satisfied to work there? Those are the things that we have to understand in the culture. Then we get to technology. This is actually the technology that we are using to build digital experiences or to manufacture or to sell. So that's the technology piece. And then the last one is all around business. How do we actually generate value for the business after we've gone through the other 6 steps. And also inside of business is the understanding of value from a customer perspective. We have what we call customer value alignment. And the value alignment is to say that we're going to build things and produce things, sell things that meet the goals of our customers. When those don't align, when your customer at stage 1 and your business at stage 7 don't align, and you start to try to sell things that don't align with those values, you lose business. And so we walk through a whole process of that value alignment in stage 7.
Man, I love it. I'm so looking forward to finishing the rest of the book. I really wish I could have got it completed before our opportunity to speak here today, but what I've read so far, I'm really enjoying. I love the customer-centric strategy. I love the focus on the customer. I think it happens in all businesses, and I'm sure our industry's not immune to the idea of, wanting to focus on what you build or feeling as though you have the answer for the customer, when really it's about trying to gather data and information on what the customer really wants and being a servant. I mean, that's why it's service. It's being a servant to sort of what it is that they're wanting, and that's why anybody can be successful in business, is because you just have to listen to what the people are telling you. And I think that we've become a society that's really like me focused. So it's like, I'll focus on what I think is the best, what I think, I, as opposed to let me take more of a servant's heart, a servant's mentality, and actively listen to what the customer.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have to do that for that reason. I mean, we just launched a marketing campaign recently in the industry ourselves. And it's really because I had so many people that as I talked to them, I was identifying the pain points, and that is like trying to understand marketing better, understanding how to manage ROI, understanding where can I spend money that makes sense instead of spending money that I don't have to. So I'm listening to, it's kind of two-sided. I'm listening to both those who are selling, but then I'm also listening to those that I'm trying to sell to, and I'm trying to hear what they want. So I love it, man. Love the book, Customer Transformation. The cover on it's absolutely awesome. I think you did a great job, but the contents inside are so much more valuable. Chris, thank you for being here today. I certainly appreciate you taking your time out. All the many accolades that come with your past experiences have led you to to authoring this book and being able to share that and insights and knowledge with us over time. It just means a lot, and we're thankful from the shed industry that we get to touch on some of those questions from our little piece of this world. So I appreciate very much you being on.
Thank you, and appreciate it as well.